So I'm going to answer a question that I get asked quite often. I get messages about this, private messages on Instagram about this, multiple times a week, maybe even multiple times a day. And the question is usually something like, so how did you do it? Or what's your secret? Or what kind of advice do you have for me? How can I heal this? How can I stop pulling? And so I just thought I would make a video on this topic. One, so that I don't have to repeat myself so much. I think it'll be helpful for me to just put this message out there so that all of you or anybody can find this information. So in this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about my process, and then I'm going to offer you some insights on how you can make some of that work for you. But before I continue, I just want to say a few things about how we work as humans. And so hopefully that will help us or help you to take all this information in and be able to understand it a little bit more fully as I explain the process in a little bit more detail. So the nature of people. I want to talk a little bit about the nature of people. First of all, we're all different. So when I get this question, how did you do it? How did you beat it? How did you stop pulling? I'm always very hesitant to give away what I did because I don't want you to copy what I did, because what worked for me or the process that I went through might be counterintuitive or counterproductive for you and your unique makeup, your unique journey that you're on. We come from different backgrounds. We've had different upbringings, different genetics, and we have different personalities, and our tendencies are different. Our mannerisms are different. And so that means that whenever you do get to get on the healing path, your path is going to look quite different than somebody else's. And so that's the first thing that I wanted to point out. So the treatment should be personalized from person to person. It's not going to look just like mine. And so that's really important to keep in mind, because you want to be doing what's best for you. And I know it's a little bit confusing because a lot of us don't know how to do what's best for us because we're so disconnected from ourselves and from our own intuition that we don't even know where to start. We don't even know how to begin. So that's the first thing. But even though we're all different, we are alike in many ways, in that there are three main things that we need as humans. And the most important time in our life that we needed these things were when we were an infant or even in our mother's womb. And those things were safety, security, and love. Those are the three things that we all need as humans. And so if we don't have one of those three things early on in life, or even now, if we're not able to give ourselves those things, that's where imbalance comes in. But the natural state of humans is not imbalance. It's not suffering. It's not where you are now, because obviously you're watching this video and you're wanting to find out how you can heal your trichotillomania. And so where you are now is not the natural state that you should be in. The natural state for humans is a state of balance and harmony and peace. And so I just wanted to say that to make you aware of where you can be, and that it is possible for you to reach that point of harmony and balance in your life. Okay. So in saying those things, I'm going to continue on and just share a little bit about my process and how I really treated my trichotillomania. I know I made another video about this, like a step-by-step process, and while those things can be useful and helpful to begin, there's a much more complex system in place. And so that's what I want to share a little bit on today, because over the past year or so, I've gone really in depth and have thought a lot about my process and about how I can help other people who were in the shoes that I was in, before in my life. And what I really would like to do is to help others just like you to move past this and to get to that place where you can feel safe and secure and at home in your own body. So I want to say that my process was very intuitive, in that as it was happening, I didn't even realize that it was happening. I was just doing what I felt called to do, and I was just going where my intuition was telling me to go. And so as I was going through this process, I didn't know that it would lead to me eventually being able to stop pulling. But now that I'm here after the fact, I can go back and revisit those things that I did do. And so now I can give this knowledge to you and hopefully help you to progress faster than what I did. Okay, so my healing process, the path that I took, probably took around 7 years until I got to that point where I was ready to stop pulling, and then I did, and I'll explain that a little bit further. But I want to say that the actual healing process for me probably took about 7 years or so, because it started probably when I was around 12 years old. And then I stopped pulling when I was 19. So that's about 7 years. So I'll just give a little bit of insight as to what was going on when I was 12 years old. As many of you know, I started pulling when I was 6 years old. And as a kid, I just did kid stuff. I went out playing. I didn't really care what the kids thought of me too much. When you're that little, you don't really care what other people think about you too much. And other kids don't really notice too much, or they don't care. They're just doing their own kid stuff, playing and whatnot. I will say that I was quite a shy child. I was timid, and I didn't feel comfortable going off and doing things on my own. I always needed like someone there with me, because I didn't feel confident. And I didn't have a lot of friends when I was younger too. I probably had at most a couple of friends at a time, and they would always come and go. I'd have a friend for a couple of years, and then they would move to a different school and whatnot. So I was kind of like, I think I started identifying with myself as like a loner, like a lone wolf kind of. And so eventually, when I started getting older, kids started noticing that I didn't have eyelashes, and that's when the bullying started. It wasn't necessarily directed towards the eyelashes all the time, but I was bullied for other things also, just for being shy and for, because I identified as a loner, they probably saw me as a loner, and so they thought that I was an easy target. And so the bullying started probably like 5th grade for me, like maybe the end of 4th grade. And so it was pretty tough for me for most of my middle school. And so I didn't really feel safe. But the first thing that I really did on this journey is I tried to create some sense of safety for me, and aside from the pulling, because I want to tell you that the pulling is really a safety mechanism. I know we hear the term coping mechanism, but coping for what? For stress and anxiety. And what stress and anxiety caused by? It's caused by fear. And so if you want to relieve the stress and anxiety, you want to, sometimes we would develop a coping mechanism, and I call it a safety mechanism, because it helps you to feel safe, or it helps to relieve that tension that you feel when you are not safe. or when you don't feel safe. So what I did at that time, around 12 years old, to feel safe is I started secluding myself at home a lot. I would just kind of shut myself in my room, and I would do my stuff in there. I would draw, and I did things that I enjoyed in my room, and so that's where I felt the safest. And I also want to say too that I didn't feel completely safe in my home. Not that it was an abusive household or anything like that, but just that my relationship with my mom wasn't that great. And I'll explain that a little bit further in this video, but it wasn't like it was like the kind of household where if you go out of your room, you're asked to do chores, or you're asked to do something that you don't want to do. And as a kid, you don't always want to be asked to do those kinds of things. You want to be connected with. You want somebody to ask you how your day is and how you're feeling and that sort of thing. And that's what I really needed at that time. But my parents were not really supportive or understanding of my trick. And so that also made me feel like I couldn't really go to them to talk to them about anything. So I kind of I'd kind of hide in my room, I guess. So that was one thing I did to help me feel safe. Another thing was that I didn't really participate in class that much because I didn't like attention on me. So that was another thing. People might have just thought that I was shy or whatever, but looking back on it, I know it was because I was trying to protect myself. So those were a couple of things that I did to help me feel safe at that time. So I kind of remained in that kind of like shy, secluded state for a couple of years, for probably like the first 2 years of middle school, and then something changed where I started making a lot more friends, or I started kind of finding my friend group. I kind of started discovering who I was and what I liked, and I think this is the case for a lot of people, a lot of kids in middle school, is where you kind of start, finding your taste in music and your taste in clothes and those sorts of things. And so you start developing an identity. And so then I was able to find other kids who liked the same things that I liked, and who we got along really well. And then I moved schools. So then I went to high school, and all of my friends went to a different high school than me. So then I kind of had to start all over, and I kind of had to make friends all over again. And I was really nervous about that because I had always had trouble making friends, or I'd always told myself that I had trouble making friends, but it ended up working out really well. I was in band in middle school, and my grandpa convinced me to stick with it because I wasn't going to do it because I was afraid that people would make fun of me for being in band. And I realize now that's really silly, of course, but when you're a teenager, that's what you think about. So I stuck with a band, and that's how I found my core group of friends in high school, and we remained friends for those 4 years. And so that was kind of the next phase of my healing, is self-connection. So I found my tribe, I guess, my family, and they were the people who I could really trust and rely on, and they really accepted me for who I was. They never brought up my lack of eyelashes or anything like that, and so I felt safe around them because I knew that they wouldn't talk about it, because I really didn't want to talk about it. It was really uncomfortable for me when anybody brought it up, and so I just felt really safe with that group, with my group of friends. There were 5 of us in total, 5 girls, and so they really accepted me, and it taught me how to accept myself. I started realizing a lot of the good qualities in myself, and it helped me to feel closer to myself. It helped me to realize how great I was, and I was starting to develop a lot of self-love, and I had a lot of compassion for myself. And it was a really difficult time, of course. You know, high school is a difficult time for any teenager, but when you're going through high school with something like trichotillomania also, as well as like family issues that I had going on at the time, having that core group of friends really helped. So I would say I found my community. I found an exterior support system that taught me how to love and appreciate and support myself as well. And so I started to feel really safe with where I was at. And I started to learn how to trust myself again. And with these friends who I loved and I trusted, I felt safe to express myself with them. So I wasn't blocked emotionally or creatively anymore. I was able to let out what needed to be let out, and I wasn't afraid of being judged for it. And I think that really, I know that it really helped because I was finally able to be authentic and to just breathe and to just be me, you know. And I get kind of like emotional just thinking about it because it was so hard for me at that time. And so, yeah, having that support system was really, really helpful. So yeah, I would say that's the second phase. What for me was all about self-acceptance and self-love and rebuilding trust with myself and being authentic, you know, expressing myself, expressing my emotions, and not bottling everything up anymore like I had been doing my whole life, because that's what I'd been taught to do. You know, my parents taught me to be quiet and to not get upset about things. And so in high school, I was able to really just release all of that. And it was really beneficial. So after high school, I moved out of my mom's place. And I think this was, I know this was the final kick that I needed. Because it really allowed me to heal away from my home that I associated with a lot of toxic memories and toxic things. So this last phase, I would say, is all about healing old wounds. Because when I moved out of my mom's place, I was able to kind of let distance do the work in a way. It didn't do all of the work, and I'm still healing from a lot of that stuff even now, even years and years after I've stopped pulling, because the healing process never ends. You know, we will always keep evolving, we'll always keep growing and changing. But at the time, the distance is what I needed to allow me to feel like I could heal on my own, like I could kind of separate myself from that kind of toxic energy that I'd had in that house and that I'd had with my mom for so many years. And so that's why I feel like a lot of this is going to be different for you, because many of you don't have toxic relationships with your parents, and your homes are just fine, and your house is where you feel safe, or you feel safe talking about your issues with your parents. And that was not the case for me at all. And so that's why I'm going to go into detail in a little bit about what this might look like for you and how you can apply these things to your life. Okay, so right, so the last phase, I moved out of my mom's when I was 18, and I started going to a community college. And I think it was just a combination of, you know, being free from that environment and starting this new chapter where I just felt I just knew it. I just felt ready to take action and kind of like make a plan to let go of the pulling. I just knew that I was ready to let go of it. I knew that like it was it. I didn't need it anymore. And that I was going to do this for myself because I loved myself and because I wanted better for myself. I didn't do it out of necessity. I didn't do it out of desperation. I did it because I truly believed that I could. And I truly believed that I was ready. Okay. And so if you're still in that place where you feel desperate or where you are trying to change things because you're not accepting of where you're at, then it's very likely that you will not be able to stop because you have to accept your situation and yourself right now just as you are. And I know that's really hard to hear. I mean, it's probably not what you want to hear, but if you want long-term results, you have to put in the work. There is no quick fix for this. There's no quick fix for trichotillomania. You have got to address what's going on fully and be honest with yourself and allow yourself to feel the things that need to be felt and allow yourself to be where you're at and allow yourself to not be perfect. When I finally made that plan was when I it's kind of foggy to me right now, but I remember sitting down on my bed and I just made a list of like all the things that I wanted to do that year. And so it's not like I even focused on the trichotillomania. That was just like one thing that I kind of put on my list that I thought I could do that year. And so I wrote it down, and I wrote down kind of like what I would do to help me get through that. I think I wrote down things like because when I pulled mostly in my bed, you know, at night. I didn't pull in front of anyone. So I really just had to focus on that one time during the day when I was falling asleep in my bed, not to pull. So as I was falling asleep, I would make sure that I would be really aware of what my hands were doing during that time. And if I felt an urge, I would just say, not tonight, or I don't know, I would say something comforting to myself to reassure myself that I could do it. And of course, there were nights where I relapsed, and then I would just be really forgiving with myself in those moments and treat myself with compassion and just say, you know what, just start over again tomorrow. It's fine. You're doing good. And so, yeah, I just kept doing that until a couple of months went by, and then I realized that I wasn't pulling anymore and that it had gone. And, I can't say for sure that there's a cure for trichotillomania. However, for me personally, I believe that I'm cured because I don't have those urges anymore. It's not even something that I have to think about anymore. And so, maybe that's what full recovery looks like. And so I know, and I truly believe that that is possible for each and every single one of you watching this video right now. And because you're here watching this video, that to me signals that you believe it too. Otherwise, you wouldn't have gotten to this point and watched this far. So I want to give you some tips and pointers on what this process might look like for you. So the first kind of phase, and that's the thing, I don't want to say like step by step, because this has to be intuitive. You have to do what you feel, what you are called to do in the order that you feel called to do it. I can't say this is step 1, step 2, step 3, because the steps might be different for each and every single one of you. And so I would say the first phase is to create safety. And what do I mean by that is I mean to create a sense of safety within yourself. So first, that might look like creating safety externally. What things can you do in your external world that can help you feel a little bit safer? Is it, cutting ties with some toxic friends who maybe they when you're around them, you don't feel safe when you're around them? Or is it, if you're feeling anxious all the time, what can you do to help you lessen that anxiety? So maybe stress management, anxiety management, yoga, exercise, eating healthy, creating this kind of safe environment, the safe space externally as well as internally. So that's like phase number one, learning how to take care of yourself again, giving yourself those basic needs. So it's like asking yourself, what do I need right now? What would feel good to me right now? And giving that to yourself. Okay, so that would be number one. Not number one, phase one. And then phase two would be something like reconnecting with yourself emotionally. Allowing yourself the time and the space to sit down and feel whatever is going on in your body. The anxiety and the stress and the tense feelings and the feelings of, the contracted sensations that you have in your body. Basically, any time that you're not feeling relaxed or peaceful is signaling that there's some kind of sensation that needs and wants to be felt in your body. So that would be like sitting down for 5 minutes a day and just checking in with yourself and saying, how am I feeling right now? How am I feeling right now? And just kind of feeling it in your body. Like, where is it? Is it like a racing heart, like right here, really tense? Is it the back of your neck or your shoulders? Is it in your gut? Do you have butterflies in your stomach? And just really being with that sensation. And that might feel uncomfortable for the first few minutes. It might feel really strange to be present with that. But it's not going to go away. That sensation is not going to go away until you bring your awareness to it. And, doing other things to try to get rid of that sensation is just masking it and covering it up. So a lot of what a lot of people do to cover up those sensations would be they constantly check their phone. They constantly check social media and they don't even know why. There's no notifications or anything, but every few seconds they'll pick up their phone and they'll check social media because they want that dopamine rush when they get a notification. Or it would be something like binge drinking or binge eating or pulling, right? So those are some of the things that people do to mask the sensations that are going on under the surface. So that's something that could happen in phase two, something that you could do to just connect with yourself, bring more awareness with yourself, connect with who you were before, connect with your inner child, look at old photos of yourself, because there's still this child living inside of you who is acting out. And the acting out comes in the form of anxiety and stress and depression because it's trying to get your attention. And so it's going to take time because I know that self-love and self-acceptance can't happen overnight. And that's just how it works. That's what I said. You have to put in the work to do this. If you really want it, if you really feel like, if you really want to change your life and to move past this, then you will want to do this for yourself. And so the third phase would be healing old wounds. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is many people with trichotillomania, they'll say, but I've never had anything traumatic happen in my life before. So how could I have old wounds if I've had a good childhood and nothing traumatic has happened? And I can't remember of anything bad that's happened. But I guarantee you, every single one of us, every single person, no matter how peaceful or how peaceful their upbringing was, we all have traumas. And traumas come in all different intensities. And they don't always have to be blunt and like this force, this single moment that happened in time that changes you forever. It doesn't have to be like that. It can be a buildup of little things over time that leaves a lasting impression, a lasting imprint in your memory, in your subconscious mind. And so what some of these traumas can look like is, on a hot summer day, you're playing outside with your friends all day, and your dad gets home from work, and you say, Daddy, I want to go to the pool. Can you bring me to the pool? It's so hot out. And your dad just says, not right now. I'm beat. I'm going to watch TV or something. And you were so excited, and you really wanted to do this. And your dad, somebody who is supposed to love you and care for you and provide for you, he lets you down. And so as a little kid, this is something that could be really devastating. But for us today, our adult minds were like, well, that wasn't serious. Now I understand why my dad did that, so I can't see how that would be traumatic. But as a child, it was very traumatic, and you weren't allowed the space to heal from that trauma. And you probably wouldn't have been able to heal from the trauma at that age because you were too little. You couldn't handle it. And so now that you're older, you do have the capacity to go back and heal those wounds. And for a lot of us, these wounds run very deep. And that was the case for me. My wounds came from as early on as my time in my mother's womb, when I was bonding with her inside of her while she was pregnant with me. And I think I'll make another video on that subject later on, but it is really interesting how these things really affected us that we couldn't even imagine, that are really unexpected. And so if you want to make real long-term, if you want to have real long-term healing, heal from the trichotillomania and beyond, then that's probably an ongoing process. It's an ongoing process to go back and revisit those things and to reintegrate those past traumas. Yeah, and so that's really all I wanted to touch on for this subject. And so if you're interested in diving deeper into this, if you're interested in starting this journey in healing yourself from the inside out, then I am offering one-on-one private coaching where we'll be able to dive deeper into these topics, into the self-acceptance, loving yourself exactly for who you are, where you're at, finding that self-compassion that you need to allow yourself to move forward. Because you can't move forward, you can't move towards what you want if you're still stuck thinking about the things that you don't want. It's just not possible. And so I invite you to reach out to me if you're wanting to take this step forward in your life, if you're wanting to make these changes for yourself. Right? So I'll put a link down below where you can sign up for the one-on-one coaching with me, and then we can move on from there. And I look forward to connecting with you.